Sikhs from around the world by showcasing their professions, passions, and perspectives. I'm your host, Manmeet Singh, aka the Nihung. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Manmeet Singh and Harpreet Kaur, welcome to the Nihung's Arena.
Oh, thanks, man.
It's good to see you guys. It's been a while since we got to talk, and even prepping for this, I got to talk to you, Manmeet Singh, last night, and it was good to hear your voice. I feel like we got disconnected here for several years here.
Well, every time we connect, it's not, it's on a mission, right? So we
That's
can
true.
right reasons, whether it's 84 issue or this issue, we don't connect to make jokes of and fun of each other, which we could also.
There's a lot to make fun of me, so I'm sure you could do that.
You'd have more material on me than I would on you, so that's why I don't call you.
Well, I do appreciate you both coming on. Got my 2-for-1 deal, as you mentioned, for the Nihung's Arena. So I'm really excited about that. The purpose.
I thought that you'd be doing that little intro music to get us in the mood. You know what I mean?
I put all that in afterwards, but yeah, that pumps me up too.
And then I saw that Mike Tyson fight, and I was like, okay, man, when's he put him on there somewhere?
I would love to get Mike Tyson on one day. All right. The reason that I reached out to you guys, and I'm so glad you guys graciously accepted this, is obviously there's a lot going on with all the farmer protests in Punjab and in India, and I thought of you guys initially just because of the film that you did, Harpreet Kaur, with the A Little Revolution, and it was essentially about the children of farmers that had committed suicide. And because of that, I thought, okay, you guys can maybe do a great job of explaining in English what is the issues there, what is going on, and there's probably a lot to cover here and unpack, but maybe we could work backwards and just start with the fact that what are these protests? What's going on? Kind of cover that quickly, and then maybe we can get into more of the impact, and we can get a little bit into the film and things like that too. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. And, when people say what's going on, I'd like to get some clarification on what's going on now or what's really going on and what will happen, right? So, which is the bigger and more important question that we got to ask ourselves, right?
Yeah.
Right now, in what we see in front of us, what's in the news is a chapter in the larger phenomena, which goes back. If you have an ecological dialogue, it's one direction. If you have an environmental versus a socioeconomic dialogue versus where minority is a stand in India, that. So all of those facets that deal with Sikhs, that deal with farming. So there's so many angles that you can take from this. And so what I'm going to do is I will, because your audience is just connecting, there's some excitement about understanding the current bill. But we'll go
Yeah, just real quick, though. Like, you're right about excitement. And I think that's kind of what I wanted to kind of get out of the way first, because there is a lot of excitement, but everybody's pumped up, everybody's hyped up, but I feel like a lot of people don't even understand what they're hyped up about. They're seeing something happening, something big happening, and there's maybe a romanticism, wanting to connect with it, wanting to be a part of it, but actually understanding why we got here is going to be a little more critical, but maybe just covering quickly these bills are,
I'll do the elevator pitch.
Yeah.
It's sort of like when you buy a shirt from Macy's. It'll say $100 on it, and Macy's will say, hey, we have a 60% off sale, and they'll sell it to you for $40. And you think you have a great deal, but in fact, Macy made $20, which was their target to begin with. Okay. So that is a price guideline, right? In India, from a farming perspective, you've got something called MSP. MSP is the lower threshold. It's like this, it's the minimum support price, right? So when you do the math of this is my acreage, this is the output I'll get from my crop, and these are my input costs, and this is what I'm going to get out of it. That calculation is really important to decide what kind of crop you go in and plan for in terms of pesticides, in terms of herbicides, in terms of seed, in terms of farm labor, in terms of how much acreage. So all of those mathematical things go into its calculation.
Is it the farmer that's calculating that, or is it the government that's calculating that?
I mean, they use that to determine the MSP. They look at socioeconomic and geopolitical issues and all of that and say, okay, this year, this is the rate. This year, this is the rate.
So it does vary year to year.
Yeah. So there was a point where there was you can call him the father of farming, Swaminathan. So that name is used quite frequently. And it was commissioned to him that, hey, you go in phase 2, go figure out 2 things. One is, how do we make farming viable? Because there was a point where about 2,000 farmers were leaving the farming sector every day. Every day, yeah, 2,000 farmers quitting farming. And I'm telling you this because this is one of the most shocking phenomena. If anybody is listening, I don't want to sensationalize this, but really in a 50-year arc, this is the point where you can say Punjab is for sale. Corporations are slowly building those blocks to get to that point. Keep in mind, Punjab started from New Delhi, right? And all the way post-partition, we lost land to Haryana, we lost land to Himachal Pradesh and Delhi. And so the dissection of Punjab is something we couldn't have imagined 50 years ago. And there were protests then, etc. And so now when you start looking at these indicators, and you can project that into the coming 50 years, and you will understand that there is definitely an agenda, whether it's behind the large Indian corporations so it's crony capitalism really into how can we get these lands. And Dr. Vandana Shiva, she runs this organization called Navdanya, and she alerted everyone that you have a mega crisis in front of you where 200 to 300 million citizens from the farming sector are going to migrate into the urban areas. And this is bigger than the partition of Punjab, but it is slow. So that's why it doesn't catch your eye. But this mass migration of where you're disenfranchising the landowner from her land, and then you are not diversifying their skill set, and they're going into this new area of, what are they going to do? Pull a rickshaw?
Well, you also have like the children of these farmers that are not going to go into farming. They're going to try to get an education, get out, and move also into urban areas.
Yep. So if there are 3 bills right now, okay,
yeah.
Each complements the other. But if they had to reverse one thing, they would say that, okay, in the old system, you had MSP and FCI, along with the FCI is Food Corporation of India, along with the agriculture sector said that, hey, we are going to come up with this rate and this is what we'll buy from you. So you had some type of a security, right? It's not the best rate. Things were bad. All of these suicides were happening during the MSP. Now you're taking the MSP away. Because
that's what was confusing me, actually, because the MSP was the government is buying the product at a set price, but selling it for 3, 4, 5 times, whatever the number is, more to the rest of India. So the farmer was always suffering because they weren't able to profit from that price difference. They were forced to sell it to the government at a certain rate. But now what we're saying is that price, if you take that away and leave it up to the corporations, it's going to drive the price down because they're going to look for competition and bargains.
And that's already happened, right? You're looking at a state like Bihar where they created a dual channel, right? So what had happened was, if they're not guaranteeing that through the old channel, we will guarantee purchase your produce.
Right. Okay.
So what if they say, hey, our warehouse is full. So we have, however, given you this other channel. And in the other channel, in the case of Bihar, they lost 40% And when you are on a profit margin, this is do or die situation because your margins are already so slow. So Swaminathan at one point said, okay, whatever your costs for farming are, that plus 50% is the minimum viable way for somebody to really farm. If there's no profit in there, you're not going to go farming.
Right.
Now, average sort of acreage of a farmer in India is about 3 acres. That's the calculation, a sort of high level calculation that I did. But half of all the farmers, 50% of the farmers have maybe 3% land holdings. So basically, that's why they keep mentioning farmers and farm laborers, because laborers are 40%. They don't have any land, but this is their only way of sustenance. And this is the only way you don't have corporations in rural Punjab or Haryana or elsewhere. So this is the only way you can sustain. So by creating this new channel, the farmers are asking, you have to tell this new channel that put in MSP plus whatever they want to. We will go to a new channel, but we need the security of a base minimum price. You can say it could be maybe 10% off or something. If it depend. It can be such a. What was the presidential candidate who used to say 999, and that was his
Herman Cain.
Herman Cain. Yeah, you can't Herman Cainize this and say let's just keep it simple. No, because what if there is drought? What if there are floods? How are all of these?
Yeah, there's a lot of factors that could come in. You could have a bad crop, whatever it is, and
are you
still
tying
need
this to the cost of diesel? Fuel costs are going up every year.
Right.
So it's a very complex formula, right?
Okay.
So when you come up with this new channel, you need to put that accountability and saying and giving the farmer security. And that's why, because of this very fact, the oldest alliance in India of BJP and Shromani Akali Dal broke away. These farmers, Harpreet, remember when we did the demonstration with the farmers? I think it was we know a couple of the farmer unions, and this was the Rajawal group, I think. And they went to Delhi. There was maybe about 1,000 farmers. All these unions, they'll come to Delhi all the time in front of Jantar Mantar, a designated demonstration site close to the parliament. And they made me 1,000, best case scenario, 5,000, best case scenario, maybe 10,000. If I don't even remember if something that was that big. But for I
don't mean that just it's kind of a funny story actually from what I remember. So we were so pumped up and all about the movement and going and following these farmers, and we get on the train with them from Punjab, and we're doing all these interviews in the train, and I was like, Manmeet, this is going to be big. And we get to Delhi and Jantar Mantar, that's where I guess they were going to start the demonstration. And we get there and sare lete hoye, and they're lying down, langar ban raha, they're eating. And I'm like, wait, wasn't it supposed to start?
And we're like, hey, you gave us 1 p.m. We're here at 1 p.m.
We thought, chalo India, kante baad shuru honge. Kha pee ke people were lying down and snoring. And then when the demonstration did start, it was like maybe 100 people. It was
very disorganized, but to their point, these protests cost a lot of money, right? And loss of productivity, all of that. And they're tired.
Yeah, your time away and everything. Yeah, absolutely.
Does anyone sitting in America realize that they're close to, estimates are between 250,000 to 500,000 farmers easily that are on the border of New Delhi right now?
Right.
That is a ginormous number.
That's huge.
What about the porta potties for them?
There's a lot of operational stuff and
when
logistics.
It rains, where are they taking shelter? Right. How are they sleeping at night?
Yeah.
They have done some preparation.
No, but you see a lot of images. People are just putting something down on the ground, and then just laying by their truck or trying to find a little spot away from everything.
Yeah. So therein lies a sort of a operational crisis on organizing a protest of this nature and this size. Now, they also refuse to go into this Burari ground, which is on the outskirts. This is the Sant Nirankari ground. And one, for religious reasons, they should not. These were the Nirankaris who berated the gurus and all of that. To use that ground would be, they're smarter than that. These guys are smart. I mean, they're like, oh, let's educate the farmers. Well, screw you. This farmer does not need your education. He does not need your money. He's the one that right now, look at the maturity of them chiding each other and scolding each other and making sure that it doesn't turn violent. It doesn't turn political. Your mission is laser focused, that this is purely farmers related. It's not Punjab related. But we've been, whether it was 1947, whether it was the political aspects in 1975 or Aam Aadmi Party or any other third political front, Punjab has always been on the progressive side of reform,
Right.
So therefore, they're saying, hey, it's not just us, even the Haryana farmers. When the Haryana farmers and Himachal farmers and now Rajasthan farmers and other states are slowly joining in, they understood the impact of this long term. And that's when they started coming in. Now, granted, there are quite deep arguments on MSP and why certain states are there depending on their crops and all of that. But that does not, I don't think so. Your audience is concerned with all those dynamics. But
no, but I think this is all fascinating to people still. Again, I agree with you. We don't want to go too deep into the weeds in this one, but when you think about what's happening there, you really have a dozen or maybe dozens of different groups kind of coming together, right? And then even their slogans, you have the Dilli Chalo and you have the Stand with Farmers challenge. You have all these people trying to hashtag these things, but they all have a common cause here, but they have their own reasons.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, it is, because you see, there is what the government is trying to do is sow the seed that it's a Sikh cause,
right?
It's a separatist cause, and that way they wash their hands,
right,
and are able to isolate the other farmers from joining forces.
Right.
And they're saying they've got communal issues, whether it's 84, whether it's Khalistan, whatever, because it's really the best. It's a strategy, right?
Yeah.
And that way,
divide and conquer.
Yeah, divide and conquer. And then it sows the seed of all of these trolls online. Oh, these guys are thugs, this, that. Thug, the guy who's over there demonstrating, his son just died, soldier on the border fighting for India. You've got these soldiers, they have nothing to do with Khalistan. Half of them have, if you keep calling them, us, you and I, and we're like, okay, so you're saying if you want a just system, go get Khalistan. Is that what you're saying? Because you're not going to get it in the current framework.
Right.
And also the trauma that the Sikh community has been through. So you've got the religious aspect, the recent history, and right now a socioeconomic factor that's driving this. So that's why you've never seen anything. This is way bigger than Sarbat Khalsa that happened,
that 2015. Yeah. So let's look at it this way. Okay. I know we mentioned these three bills, but let's break it down. In simplest terms, what are the 3 points? What are the 3 bills addressing specifically? One is the MSP.
So we got derailed on that. So one is the MSP, right?
Yeah.
The second one is your ability to do stocking, which is basically what we're saying is right now we can't cap the amount of your crop to in the warehouses. Okay. Now by lifting the quantity of how much can be stored, what we are giving them is a free range on hoarding and controlling the markets. It's basically like the OPEC in the Middle East.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
They can say, this is how much we're going to produce. This is how much we're going to release. Now, in that case, they're the farmers or they're the oil manufacturers, and they can control the markets. Okay. The US, Russia, etc. So they can. So now, if the farmer himself had silos, we've got silage over here. Harpreet does a lot of farming stuff over here. I mean, what percentage of silos are there that when you go to these farms, every farmer has a silo or no?
Most farmers do. Most farmers are able to store their own crop.
That's the US.
That's
the US.
Yeah. You don't see that in India.
You go to Punjab farmlands, you're not going to see all of these silos. You'll see all of these warehouses, right?
Okay.
And what happens over there is the government or the middlemen own these warehouses where they do the measuring, the stocks, and then the payment is given to the other middlemen. And there are lots of middlemen.
Of course.
So, so they're saying, you know what? We're going to take the cap off of this, and you can go crazy on this. Now, the point over here is, depending upon the situation, because there was the onion crisis, there is this crisis, so this will give them a free range to control prices. And that takes the equation out of the best case scenario for the farmer. Okay. And the third provision, which I think is the one that does with contract farming, and it really has to have the safeguarding for the farmers. It's missing right now. Let's say Coke says that I want sugar cane, and this is the amount of sugar I want, or corn I want, or Pepsi says I want this quality of Lay's potatoes chips, and this is the kind of potato you have. Yeah. What if there's a famine? What if there is, they commit to that? Is there crop insurance that you're providing? Because Lay's is saying, hey, if you have a bad year, you have a bad year. It's not us, right?
Right.
So they're saying, how can we safeguard when it comes to contract farming? Now,
even right there, because you have a difference in the size of your player. If you're a farmer, you have very little. If you're a corporation, you have a lot. Yeah. And so it's easy for you to play the game when you're a corporation, but as a farmer, that could destroy you. That could ruin you.
Yeah. So if there's a year where there are heavy rains and floods and you lose your crop, at least in the government, you can go and plead with them, etc., and you'll get something out of them to sustain your family, or enough to get, seeds for your next cycle. But in this new situation, there's no guarantee if you already are, providing for the corporations or doing contract farming. Now, I'd be lying to you if I said that, these bills and ordinances, they came out this year and it is all fresh off the press for me personally. Yeah. So I am only having conversations with farmers or activists in India. And I had, conversation with Jaji Uncle today, with Fulka Uncle, and a couple of other farmers actually who are in the field, and they're saying, hey, these are our concerns. This is how this bill is going to impact us. But if people sitting over here went away with one thing, and I'm going to bring it in a filmmaker's term, right? When we came up with our film, we posted it on Amazon. And Amazon sent us a contract, or Netflix will send you a contract, and they'll say, hey, we'll sell your film for $10, and we're going to keep $4 out of that. And I was like, what? They're taking 40% and they didn't do anything. Well, guess what? The bag of rice that you get from Costco, farmer gets anywhere between 23 to 27%. Everything else. So, that's how, people hate middlemen, right?
Yeah.
People hate, here's a jab. People don't like real estate
I know.
because they're taking 3% commission to do all the work, to sustain their families, to be out there and monitor law and make sure everything goes safely in a transaction. They're not willing to do that.
Right.
And imagine how infuriated our people should be when we find out that when we buy some of this produce, at least from India, because you've got crony capitalism, the farmer's just getting less than a third.
Yeah. And actually, before you go on, I think one of them, I don't know if it was the second bill or the third one, but it doesn't matter. But there was something also about subsidies. And I think a lot of times people don't understand why those subsidies are in place. Like even in the States, we have subsidies for dairy, right? If you didn't have the subsidies, which is the government collecting taxes from all of us and paying the farmers a certain amount back so that they can sell their milk for $3 a gallon. If they didn't have those subsidies, the farmer would be selling that milk for $6 or $7 a gallon. And then people wouldn't be buying it. So in order to make it affordable for everybody to buy, you have to subsidize the farmer. And I think that's also part of one of these bills where they're eliminating subsidies, or they're not allowing subsidies.
Yeah, there is no country in the world. I mean, it's a worldwide practice that deals with subsidizing farmers. Yeah, because the equation
specifically agriculture,
right? So there will be a point where you'll be subsidizing auto workers, maybe, right?
Yeah,
As robots come in and, you go follow Michael Yang and his stories and the realities of what's around the corner in the next decade. I can't even say later on in the century because it's happening so rapidly.
Right.
We are going to come into a subsidy model or a different scale of standard of living, etc.
Right.
So now in the case of farmers, when we are subsidizing them because our agroeconomics are so out of whack. And this is a quick Band-Aid to subsidize, and we just don't know any better. So, yeah, I agree. This is just going to make it... Right. So you remove the subsidies. With the subsidies, right now, every 30 minutes, a farmer is committing suicide.
Every 30 minutes?
Every 30 minutes, an Indian farmer is committing suicide.
Wow.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Yeah, so one thing that I... was thinking about that too, because I want to kind of get back to what you were saying, how little the farmer is actually making on these things as the prices stack up. And this is something I think we spoke about last night, and it's worth bringing up again. But if you really want to have an impact that helps the farmers, protest Costco and them selling basmati rice, and you'll get it. You can now draw attention. You can draw media attention to it. And you can hit them in the pocketbook, and people can understand that when we over here go buy our rice from Costco, how little of that is going to the farmer. Until Costco says, hey, we can't continue selling this product there, and we're demanding that the farmer get paid more for this product, you're always going to have this imbalance.
Yeah. So our proposal is it's, I would say, maturity in our advocacy, maturity in the way we fight for ourselves, and the way activism is practiced within our community. For now, it's mostly, hey, let's go in front of the Indian embassy, or let's go in front of this guy's office, and let's just scream, vent, feel good about it, and send some pictures.
Yeah.
But it's cheaper and more effective if we have lobbying groups, because unless you strike them politically or economically, you're at their mercy of their attention. Right now, everything is COVID. So farmers in India are the least of their problems. But keep in mind, everybody who's listening over here, few months ago, we were doing this to the farmers in America. Thank you for your produce. Thank you for being the frontline workers. Thank you, all the nurses. Thank you, all the mail delivery personnel. Thank you to all the people who are in the lower strata of this economic pyramid. When it comes to farmers in India, we're showing them the middle finger. We just do it. Colin once said he's HRLN, Human Rights Law Network's top attorney, and he's won the Magsaysay Award and all of these other awards. He's in our film also.
Yeah.
He said, India is such an aggressive society that Durga should come down and chop the heads of these men who are in charge. And this is coming from the top human rights attorney in India.
Wow.
To give you because when you go in the inner circles, both politically, we've had some interest over there, and economically, you just see how cutthroat it is, and there is no mercy for the poor. Whereas our economic model says, Sabadda Palang, we believe in sharing. Even if Guru Gobind Singh injured someone, there was a little chip of gold enough to sustain him, his family, and take care of him, because we truly, genuinely in our fight have no ill will.
Right.
So anyways, our campaign right now, then we thought, how can we connect a consumer or even a Sikh, Mantir, and all the Sikhs over here in America, if you're listening, when you go buy a shirt, it says made in Bangladesh, made in Pakistan, made in Peru, Vietnam, whatever. But there is one item that when you go out and it connects you, it comes from your brother's farm, it's basmati rice, whether it's at Costco, whether it's at Walmart, whether it's where else.
Right.
So the campaign, that idea, it's still in concept, and this is where we need support. We can't do it ourselves. We need people to organize. Is ban blood basmati.
Yeah, like the blood diamond issue from Africa.
Exactly. Yeah. Hashtag ban blood basmati. You got blood diamonds that are illegal in this country. If I bought some, and then the authorities find out, I'm behind bars.
See, I have no diamonds.
Yeah, that's good.
Well, and see, I have no rights, so we didn't have dinner. But so
this is not a counseling session.
When you come up with a concept like that, it strikes you, yeah, man. Is the diamond, and then take it further, because somebody will counter argue, hey, that's diamonds. This is a commodity product. We need to eat. There are injustices when you're procuring food. But wait a second. This was the same point years ago when we were doing to the coffee farmers what we're doing to the rice farmer today. For coffee, we got free trade. And if you have any bag that you go out, Pete's Coffee in the back, it'll say, hey, we do fair trade. It's fair trade or nothing.
So how would that work? How does that work for the Punjabi farmer? The Punjabi farmer then is somehow selling directly to these markets? Because isn't that part of the problem?
That is too complicated, and world trade is involved, et cetera, et cetera. So the dynamics we don't even have, we can be a part of that equation, but we can't champion that.
Yeah. Okay.
What is easier for us is to go to organizations like Costco and audit their self-governance for fair trade. Okay. Right? Autos or other industrial sort of companies are always trying to sell that we do auto governance rather than, trade unions come in. And, unions are a big thing in America too, right? Especially with auto unions, et cetera. You know that.
Yep. I'm in Detroit. Yeah.
Yeah. So now we're not going to go to that level. And for what, about $2 billion? Yeah. So but the consumers and the lawmakers, they can definitely say that, hey, we have heard that India has a huge problem with farmers committing suicide. Every 30 minutes, a farmer is committing suicide. This stat is, it's been there for the last 10, 20 years. So it's a well-known fact. So fix your problem. 2, who cares put all of this issue aside. It's about democracy, the world's largest democracy. There are a bunch of people who are going to the Capitol just to protest. So if you came to DC and if somebody started, pulling you over on the highway on 90 and saying, hey, sorry, you can't go to DC, and arrest you. And you're like, why are you arresting me?
Yeah. Well, yeah. It would be outrageous. It would literally, it would be so outrageous.
It'd be like, no, you look like Bin Laden or some ridiculous stuff like that, right? Yeah. And you're like, are you, what?
Yeah.
I look like Bin Laden? But that's exactly what you're doing to these farmers when you go say you're fighting for Khalistan and not for your crop. Because they are trying to inject that, that little seed when it's sown. And when you tweet about it and all of these, I don't even know if...
it becomes a way for them to easily undermine the whole thing.
And all of these whack news channels in India, of them. Yeah. And they go in and say, hey, these are Khalistanis. There's Pindramana, this... It's all garbage. It's because they can't address it. Anyways, there is a concern over here, and that has to be conveyed to the lawmakers and the industry and say, hey, one, India has a really bad past performance of being a democracy, and this fascism that has crept in, right? Yeah. 10 years ago, Modi could not come to this country. He was on the ban list, right? Right. Obama was the first one to lift that because Modi came into power. Right. That does not absolve him of all the crimes that he's committed, right? He was here when we did a screening of the widow colony over here on Capitol Hill. We did a screening and Modi was visiting. And it was just sad to see that juxtaposition of here you have a person who's being hosted, and it gives you a sort of sense of, okay, man, how much work we have to do over here for them to realize. I think they know. I mean, they host all types of crooks coming from all of these third world countries or developed countries. And
Sure.
Well, that's why the whole ban blood basmati idea came, because we're trying to see how can we visually capture this here. I mean, people are reading the newspaper, they're seeing the media, they're seeing what's happening in India, but that disconnect is there because we don't know anything about rice except when we eat it.
Right.
Oh, so good. We got brown rice, we got white rice, but we don't know the reality of what it takes to bring it to the table. But the whole ban blood basmati idea is something that Manmeet and I have been talking about for years. But then when when this issue came up now, Manmeet's like, hey, people are like, why aren't people locally talking about this? Why don't we understand this? And that's when we started talking about Costco.
Yeah, and you guys mentioned like the farmer suicides, and maybe this is a good segue to talking about your film, because the farmers were committing suicide because they were ending up in a financial crunch. The loans that they had to pay, the interest rates they had to pay, the chemicals that they had to get loans in order to buy the chemicals that they're required to use, and they're required to use the certain banks, and they're required to use Monsanto chemicals, whatever it is, and a certain seed that they have to buy, and they have to use it this way. The cost of all that was phenomenal. And so now they're borrowing money to pay for it. And then they end up in debt because they're not making the money to cover the debt they need in order to run the farm. So this puts them into financial squeeze, and especially in Asian cultures, but particular in Punjab too, it is a matter of honor. It is a matter of, that this is providing for your family, taking care of your family. And now you feel like you have lost that. You've lost what your purpose here is. You've lost what your responsibility is in life. And so then it leads people to commit suicide to get out from under all this debt. So based on that is how you kind of focused in on your film on the children of these farmers that are committing suicide.
Well, when we first started this project, everybody was talking about water issues, drug issues in Punjab, the poverty levels. And we went and did a lot of interviews. We spoke to subject matter experts, and we came back with a lot of material. We went through farms, and I started cutting the trailer for the film. And initially it was called Suicide Alley, we decided. And I'm sitting there and I cut like 4 or 5 different trailers. I had like 5-minute versions, 10-minute, 20-minute ones. And Manmeet's like, you need to finish this film. And I felt disconnected because it was so broad, it was so heavy. And I thought, hey, as a filmmaker, I mean, all I see is talking heads. So we've got some great footage. We got B-roll of the water. We've got the scenery. But there is something missing in this film, Manmeet. There is something missing. And if I'm not connecting, I can't complete this film. And there were a lot of people who were excited about the film because we had the trailers out there for Suicide Alley. And I felt like I don't want my film to be a PowerPoint. And that's when I realized everyone's talking about the people who are committing suicide. We're talking about the issue, but no one's counting the numbers and the people that are left behind. Right. And that's when I thought about the children. And I said, Manmeet, the heart of our film is missing. This is like a PowerPoint presentation. We've got great subject matter experts, but that's what we have books for. You can go pick up a book.
Yeah, we didn't want it to be like an inconvenient truth version of
Al Gore just doing a PowerPoint in the background.
Like, we could have done it. We would just need Al Gore to do it for us. And then it would have worked.
And those films were great, but if it's up to the filmmaker. And if I didn't feel connected, I didn't feel right making that type of film.
No, that makes sense, because you got to think about, sometimes it's one thing to get the information, one thing to get the data, but it's another thing to connect on an emotional level. And you have to do that through some kind of story.
Yeah, right? The bottom line is, who's paying the price for all of this mismanagement?
Right.
Right. When the farmer commits suicide, his family of 4 or 5 are left to fend for themselves. Their lives are ruined. There are families where there were 3, 4 suicides. Like, think, man.
Oh, wow.
It was a very emotional film for us because, I still remember going to this one house where this guy's brother had just committed suicide. So everything was kind of raw. And then the father was just, he had accepted it. He had been through partition and tough times. But when the brother like broke down and he's like, man, my brother was, he was a guy in the, Banyajo, he was the life of the party. You know how you have as a brother, you're like, dude, like for us, people call us Three Musketeers, and the three of brothers, it's like three of us get together. We're like, nobody can touch us. You feel that energy is, no matter where they are right now, at least I know middle of the night, they're going to bail me out. It gives you that confidence. And when that's gone, like losing your parents is one thing, but when you're close to your brother in that same, joint family, seeing him every day, going out to having a routine, and all of a sudden your partner, it's like cops, out on the streets when they lose their partner. It's it's
the person that's got your back. It's the person
he's got your back. He's got your
it's the person you can vent to. There's a lot there in that relationship that goes beyond just the blood relationship.
Oh yeah, man. And that guy was bawling, and then I was emotional, and Harpreet and I, we've just talked to too many widows, too many orphan children, between the two films.
I think this film was heavy. It was difficult, but at the same time, being around kids, you do get times where it's lighthearted too. They're laughing. I think initially it was very hard because I know we had gone to the villages years before, and we had done all these subject matter interviews and stuff. But when I started working with the kids, I was like, wow, is this Punjab? Like, you're seeing kids with ripped clothes who are having one meal a day. Wow. And I think it was very hard for my team because they said, okay, we should be feeding these kids or we should be giving them clothes. And I said, you know what, we're making a documentary here. Afterwards, you can adopt families, you can do whatever you want. But during the process of actually capturing what's happening and unfolding, we can't do that. We have to show the reality. We have to show that these kids are hungry. They're studying they don't have electricity. They don't, they don't have furniture. It was like I felt like I was in Africa. It was devastating.
Right.
I think
in fact, one of the videographer, she worked with Sylvester Stallone. So she was, very talented.
This was her first documentary, and I think it really hit her being in the field.
And she was like, what did she say? She said, I charge like $4,000 a day or some ridiculous amount. And we were like, we just laughed. And we were sitting in a cafe in Austin. And then she's like, for this, she was very, and she's like, for this project, I'll charge you for 1 day.
And then she had 4 kids. And
she was from Africa. And so she said over there, you've got all of these aid organizations that come to Africa all the time.
I see.
Like, dude, in Punjab, there's
because everybody's aware. Everybody's aware of the struggle.
Aware, right? Yeah. So the motherland needs help, and help is going to go, and it should. And they have, they've got war, famine, etc., a different dynamic. But here, you've got a different dynamic altogether, and they are fending just for themselves.
And I think it really hit us when we went to the villages, because when they say there's so many suicides here, we're like, okay. But then we parked our car, and then it was like every other home was a home of somebody who had committed suicide. They're like, just keep walking.
They're like, okay, there's a suicide here. There's another one here. There's another. It's not like, we came from, I would say, 30 years ago. During 84 also, suicides were happening. Mm-hmm. I mean, the whole Dharam Yudh Morcha, what was the water issues?
Yeah, the water issues are further. This is about the farmers. Yeah.
So when we decided about the film aspect, Harpreet was like, either we make a film about riparian laws, which will be great for a university, or how do we get people, even this is hard for people to watch. That's why she changed. She's like, nobody's going to watch a film that says suicide something. It's depressed. So then we were like, okay, it has to inspire Nikki Kranti, a little revolution. And then we tweaked our angle a little bit.
And a lot of it happened when we were there. We still went there. We spent months trying to connect with the kids. And I think that's where I don't connect through books and lectures. I connect with the people. That's just maybe I'm drawn to.
You're a people person.
I don't know. It's like I connect with people in the field and the women. And I remember the first day we got there, I'm wearing my jeans and t-shirt, and I had a bandana on that day. And the women were talking in Punjabi, and I think they thought maybe we don't know Punjabi. And then I spoke back to them, and then they started laughing, and they're like, "Tu to sade vargi hai." And I said, "Yeah." And then I was doing this. They were in the field picking cotton. And then they sat down for their lunch break. and I'm still recording. And this was before we had hired a team to go, and this was our first time in the villages.
Okay.
So it was just Manmeet and myself. And I was recording, and then they're like, "Nahi, nahi, tu aake chapi, have tea with us."
Yeah.
And they're taking the bartan, the kolis, and they're taking the mitti, and they're kind of cleaning it with that.
Yeah. That's how you do it. Yeah.
And for a minute, I was like, "Oh my God!" And it wasn't that I'm better than you or anything, but I just came to India a day ago, and then I'm seeing like mitti, like little floating, and they're drinking. And they said, "Nahi, bath tu, sit with us," and they're grabbing me. And then I was like, This is real. You're this,
right.
Sit down. So I sat down, they poured me tea, and I drank it. And I thought about it for that split second, but then later I'm just like, hey, and I think that's where the bonding happens and the connection happens, because they realize that you're in this for a long haul. You're with them. And I'd be riding on the ready with them. And it was like, and then they're like, "Do you have kids? Where are your kids?" And I said, "Yeah, the camera, this is my kid." And I remember saying, they started laughing, and they're like, I'm like, "Yeah, this is Babbu." And they're like, "Oh!" And then it was just like, you find moments to connect. And I think that's how they let us into their homes. Because word got out that these people are here. They're making a film.
And they can be honest with you now. They can give you their true emotion.
It was funny because there was a old farmer walking with a cane, and we made a few rounds to the villages, and he came to us. And he's like, we were like, "Hanji Baba ji, sat sri akal, assi interview kar rahe hain." कहना मैं अपने आप देखना सीगा, क्योंकि मैंने पता लग गया सीगा कि अंग्रेज वापस आ गए ने. So he thought that the British are bad. I'm like, no, these are different Angrez. These are the ones that ran away from the other Angrez, the ones that. But yeah, Harpreet, that first few days was, even for Sue, who was on camera, 2 days before that, she's in a 5-star hotel at Imperial in New Delhi.
Right.
She has a
shock of her life now.
For the pillows she wants, you've got a 5-pillow selection. Wow. And 4 days later, they're on a manji, no water, nothing. And that one night, I so remember that interview. It's in our film, and with Paramjeet, I think that's her name. Yeah, Paramjeet Kaur. And there was a point where, dude, like it was so quiet. The whole village was asleep. You could hear like the crackling of the wood as they're burning for the cooking. And she's telling her story and how her husband left and all the difficulties of a single woman to earn for her children, the 3 kids, their future. They still have to be married, their education. And she said a thing which, at that point, that was that was so emotional for her. And she's like, all I have is really the earth beneath my feet and the skies above my head. That's
So that's when. So we went through a lot of emotions making the film, but a lot of it happened when we were here. When Manmeet said, "Okay, why aren't you finishing Suicide Alley?" And I said, "No, like I told you earlier, the heart is missing." So that's when we decided that we need to go back. And when we went back, I said the focus is going to be the kids, and everything's happening in the field while we're there. And I said, you know what? We need to make noise. We need to empower these kids, because why are there multiple suicides happening in each home? Because people aren't empowered. And how do we stop it? And I know it's just a Band-Aid to the problem, but I thought if we empower the kids and they openly start talking about it, maybe in this home, at least in 1 home or 2 homes, we won't have multiple suicides.
Well, it's also symbolic and inspirational. It provides that hope. So even if it's not a large scale impact, it was something that happened. It happened. And it happened in a way that others can witness it and then say, we could do this. We could do this on a bigger scale.
And the visual way of getting attention was, I said, hey, we're going to march in Delhi. So we're going to march. We're going to make a shirt. This is all happening while we're in the field. And that's when we came up with this shirt idea. Every farmer counts. Yeah. Every child dreams.
It's not the rich people only, or the the techie people and their families. They're like, oh, they're used to the water. I'm like, hell no, they're not used to it. Do you know how many people are dying because of water issues? Do you know what hygienic levels are infecting their daily? We have this crap attitude that they're used to it and their immunity is great. No, because we cannot create, Sikhs in America cannot create a campaign of providing solar lights little solar lamps so that the kids can study at night because they have no, if the lights are out, the lights are out.
Right. There's no electricity.
So the brain capital, the intellectual capital of an entire generation has been written off unless you're in an urban English-speaking school with some type of hope to have a computer job or a medical degree. You are just written off. And think about this sort of apathy has led to this dire economic depression and this state of mental affairs and disorder of society that when you look at our history, we fought the British, we fought the Afghan and the Mughal forces, we fought the Hill Rajas. We have been in this mode that there is nobody who cannot out there who can bring us to ground. So we never accepted defeat. And what pushed that same Sikh to the point that for the first time in our history, we have a suicide, not here and there, it's a phenomena. It's a crisis. How much difficult is it right now? Because this is not a killing by a sword. It is that slow, methodical killing through policy.
Yeah, it's an economic oppression is what it is. Yeah. Wow. So let me ask you this though. The people that you interacted with when you were making that film, we're talking about, what is that now? Like 5-6 years ago, 7?
We started work 10 years ago.
10 years ago. It was released in 2012.
2011. Okay. Yeah, March 2011 is when we did the first showing to mostly a think tank and all the journalists. It was the first film of its kind. And we did, there were films on Maharashtra and issues that are happening in Andhra Pradesh, etc., and other regions. But for our film, we even covered Haryana. Haryana also was a very sad story of an old woman. She lost all 4 of her sons.
Oh my God.
Can you imagine a mother? She would be the queen of the village. 4 boys, she would be thinking that, in our community, you've got boys. You got 4 of them, and you can stroll in the Gurdwara like you own the place. Right. And this lady, oh my God, you should have she had nothing to say. It was just so heartbreaking. I mean, you go through these families and some of them take it on the chin and tell their kids to brush up and keep moving. And there are equally inspiring stories of
right. Well, that's kind of what I was going to ask you is what and we're talking about a decade now, kids that were 8, 10, 12. You're talking about young adults now. Is there any kind of connection with them still? Do you know what happened to some of them? Are they recovering from this? Are they participating in programs that kind of change things? Are they part of the,
Well, there was just during the making of the film, there was a huge transformation in these kids, the confidence level. When we initially brought them together, nobody openly talks about suicide there. So even though they were in the same village, they didn't know that so-and-so's father or uncle had committed suicide. So when we brought them together and the whole exercise of talking about this, writing letters, it's all in the film. So it hit them that, hey, there's someone, his father committed suicide or his mom committed suicide.
It's like wow, I didn't know that kind of moment.
And they all started talking and transforming and then going to Delhi. And by the end of the film, these kids were empowered. A lot of them were empowered. We've kept in touch. There's a lot of families that have been adopted financially. Yeah.
So tell them about what we did. It was kind of cool. This was the first time they ever left, some of them their village or the surrounding villages where they could walk to and go to Delhi. For them, it was like, us going to Paris or something.
So we rented the idea was to go to Delhi to demonstrate and to meet the agriculture minister, Sharad Pawar. And that's why we wore the T-shirts to get the media attention. And we weren't sure how many people would show up to the demonstration. Right. We had our group of 12 kids. We had the BG and one of the mothers that went with us and ourselves and our crew. And one interesting story is that in Delhi, they wanted ice cream. These kids had never had ice cream on a cone.
Yeah, some of them never had ice cream on a cone.
Oh my God! Wow. Yeah, I mean, we couldn't even imagine something like that.
Yeah, and then even during the the way we packed a lot of candy and fruit and everything for our crew and for the kids. And one of the kids just kept going in the back and eating. And one of my crew members said, Harpreet, you need to tell him to stop. He's going to get sick. And I said, I can't tell him to stop. We've got a long drive and let them enjoy. And, they've done a lot. They've come a long way. And next thing you know, growing up, there's kids vomiting. And she goes, I have kids. I told you. But it's hard to say no. And so eventually we started saying, okay, we're going to eat at this time. We'll have snack at this time. But
you had to put some structure to it because literally they had never had these things. And
they're kids.
And it was hard because not only are we making a film, but the whole time in Delhi, throughout the process, I'm counting heads because you're responsible for these kids. You're their mother. You're their father. They're counting on you. You're bringing them, taking them out of their villages. So it was logistically a very difficult film to make. And then once we got to Delhi, even when we were planning this, we were told, you're going to get arrested. This is going to happen. Prepare for the worst. Prepare to run. And I'm thinking, oh my God, we have 12 bache.
Yeah, how are you going to do that?
Run? And then it came down to who's going to be arrested between Manmeet and me. I mean, I know now we can easily talk about this, but it was stressful.
Okay,
sure.
So, and I'll tell you what, here is the aspect, because I'm looking at this rally over there and the protest. So think us, like you and Jasu, if you went over there and said, okay, we want to do a protest. Okay, these are our 10 kids. You can't do a protest with 10 kids. Then we were like, okay, we need the numbers. And we called and all the Sikh schools in Delhi and all the government schools and all the schools where you had poor children. And then we worked with one or two organizations and actually some political parties also that were on the left side of the equation to come in and help us. And we'd allocated funds to work with them, the route, to get the permission, to arrange for the buses, permission slips from the students to their parents and teachers to get the day off. Yeah. Then I'll put a spiel here for 1469, Harinder and Kiran. They're just amazing people. They do a lot of, these Punjab-related shirts and Sikhi shirts and all Fulkari stuff and everything to do with Punjabi culture. So they came in and helped us with T-shirts, and all the T-shirts said, every farmer counts, every child dreams. In the back, it said Pagdi Sambal. These were some of the slogans: Inqilab Zindabad, Viva la Revolution, whatever of Punjab. All the whatever we. And
the idea was it could be a silent protest. Visually, how could we get people? If we're not saying any slogans or doing slogans or saying anything, our shirts would speak for themselves.
Exactly.
So at that point, it was cool because we had these, 500 to 1,000 shirts of with this message, and you had filmmakers. So it was not another boring rally. There was sort of a little bit of marketing behind it, and then we had like the whole media plan, and there was so much media, and it was kind of cool because never before had kids protested for farmer rights. So this was a novel idea. We had to think outside the box that how do we get, and we were on the front page of all the big dailies. You've got pictures and we've got this whole scrapbook. Yeah. It was a huge success. Now, when we went to the guy's place, Sharad Pawar, who was the agriculture, state secretary of agriculture, right? So he said no, and he ran away. And then smarter people in his organization said, if you do this, all eyes are on all these children right now. You're going to look like a jerk. So you got to meet him. And then finally later on, he said, okay, we will meet only just with affected children and these many people or, whatever they. Right. So we went in and asked for monetary relief. And, and we were, months later when we got back, we got a phone call and they said, hey, these children got money from the government. And how hard is it to get money out of government of India for economic relief? So.
Yeah, I remember that call. I remember I was sitting at my sister-in-law's house and we were playing with the kids and Jaji uncle called and he just said, oh, they got the money. And I just started bawling.
Yeah.
I'm even thinking of it now because.
It was a special moment. It's one of those things in the movies, in the end of the movie.
Yeah,
you have that moment. It was a moment for us.
And these kids, we have kept in touch with some of them. A lot of them, a lot of the girls have got married and stuff. Some of them have families. But I think in a very small way, whatever way it is, this experience has changed their lives.
Yeah.
One of the families that we adopted, the girls that we spoke to, she's actually now doing her PhD.
She finished her master's.
She finished her master's.
She's the lady who said that, the world is, all I need beneath my feet, her daughter.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's empowering, and it's just it feels good to say, okay, some of these kids have changed their lives. And when we talk to them, we tell them, keep inspiring others. This is how you can help. Right. Share your story, talk about your experience.
See, Mandir, 84 cannot be just our solo subject.
Right. Well,
so
and even 84 itself
84 never happened. What would we be fighting for?
Yeah, well, I think that's another thing. Like, it's such a powerful symbol for a lot of the Sikh struggle over the last 100 years.
Yeah.
But 84 was also an event and a string of things leading up to it. Right.
Yeah,
and
this is tied to it. 84 has transformed. That oppression has transformed. They're not going to attack Akal Takht.
They're not going to bring tanks. Yeah.
They're not going to bring tanks, but they will bring policies that affect all the people who are going to do matha take over there.
Right.
It'll affect your pocketbooks, and that's how they can. So, but here's the interesting scenario here is. We can, I don't know if you want to talk anything more about the film. I'm just trying to.
Yeah. And actually, before you do, I let people know, people can watch it online.
Yeah,
it's available online.
So, so that's it's A Little Revolution.
This is
that's our postcard.
This is the original.
And,
I think
you've got Sikh kids over there in this postcard. You can see them. And then
the website is alittlerevolution.com.
littlerevolution.com.
And YouTube has the film.
YouTube has the whole film. You can just go over there, watch it. You can support a family. $1 a day and when you support this family, the donation can be processed through Sanj. Earlier, we were doing it ourselves, and then Sanj was doing it, and we decided that, hey, it created confusion whether it was coming from us or them, and we're like, okay, all the U.S. donations will be organized by Sanj.
Okay.
So please,
Baba Nanak Education.
It's a year-end donation, $350. I will. One of the activists, his name is P. Sainath. So follow him and read up. He's written amazing books on farming, etc. And he said, when somebody dies, we have this sort of emotion and empathy towards him, and we feel bad and we want to do everything. But if they live in penury, in misery, extreme misery all their lives, we absolutely have no care for them.
Yeah, we don't feel it for some reason.
So why do people have to come to that where they either display, the inner, they just bare naked themselves and their pitiful state for you to have any empathy? Or why should they get to the point where they take their lives or die or are killed?
Well, I mean, unfortunately, that might just be human nature.
It might be,
it might just, and that's why this type of media is so powerful, because it puts it right in front of our face and it forces us to connect with it, and that's why I think a lot of this work is important, because even still, like with all these farmer protests happening, what's going on? I know it's really exciting. I know there's a lot that people feel connected to, and you're seeing all the passion, but understanding that this has been ongoing for a while. This has been happening for a long time. We've had this kind of film. I mean, you said you were working on it a decade ago, and it's the same issue. The farmers aren't making the money, and they're doing all the work.
Yep.
Right?
Yep. And what's happening now is they keep saying, hey, okay, let's look at the logical way of how India's farmlands are. India has about 19,500, about 20,000 square miles of land area is Punjab. So in that, I think, and that's the stat I shared earlier. It's about 3 acres, right, per house.
Right, on average, right.
You can't. So imagine in about
3 acres is nothing.
Years, that's going to be 1.5.
Right.
Okay. How can you sustain your family with? You can't even pay for electricity at 1.5 acres. Okay. Right. So now you have to come to point of, okay, how do we diversify? How do we go outside agriculture? On Punjab's dime, all the roads have been built. All the cities, whether it's Bangalore, whether it's the IT Makkahs of India, all of them have been built on the shoulders of the Indian farmer. And now when the huge conglomerates and the Microsofts and the IBMs and the Oracles have come, they have forgotten and they don't give a care about the farmer anymore who bought him to that point. The source of where all this money and support came from is different from where all the investments went to. Let me give you an example.
Okay, what do you mean by that?
So when you talked about all the layers, paddy, for example, when you look at rice, it goes through shelling, it goes through polishing, it goes through bagging, it goes through distribution, it goes through all of these different channels. All of these different layers actually start right after you pass the border of Punjab.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So you'll see Haryana all the way from Ambala, etc.
Right.
So they were like, you know what? These secondary processes, we're not going to put it in Punjab. Somebody else in the United States are going to get rich off of it.
Which there's a lot of money there because you're talking about processing on a mass level. So they're going to buy the raw goods very cheap.
Yep.
And then the processing part, which is what is the value add.
Yep, that's the money.
That's where you can get money. That's being pushed out of Punjab into other areas. And now, again, you have the farmer doing the hard work and getting the least amount of money, when then you got the factories that are doing the quick work and making the most profit.
Yep.
Interesting.
So in all of this, really, you come now, keep in mind, all of this discussion has been so far from an economic perspective, right? There are aspects of world trade, there are aspects of okay, skill set and all of that. But the one aspect that is key and unique to Sikhs is the way the Sikh nation sits within the larger framework and the discrimination we felt time and again in the I feel as a Sikh, and if non-Sikhs are watching this, they might dispute or whatever, that we suffer less and have lesser discrimination in America than we have outside Punjab within India.
Interesting.
We may have, you can't keep using the Manmohan Singh card every time. Oh, no, it doesn't happen. Manmohan Singh and Gyani Zail Singh.
No, that's like there's no racism in America anymore because Obama became president.
Exactly. Right. Exactly. That's a good point. And so when you look at the way they have been diluting and controlling the number of Sikhs in the army, or number of the Sikhs in the high positions in the army, that has been dissolved. And today I'm looking at a lot of, in the IT world, I started looking at all the speakers and we're like, you got a lot of Indians in that list, but Punjab is missing and Sikhs are missing because, one, Center doesn't give a care. In Punjab itself, there are numerous schools where if you speak in Punjabi, you're fine. You can't speak in Punjabi. You have to speak in Hindi and English. Which makes it's the most illogical thing.
But even that issue, that goes back to Arya Samaji movement and Singh Sabha movement in the 1800s, where they wanted Punjabi in the schools.
Yeah.
These are old issues that never were resolved, and now they're having the impact they're having is dramatic.
Well, the longer you wait, it's not going to go away. It's going to morph into something more evil and more destructive and more harmful. So it's really up to the people where they say, hey, are we going to just let this slide? Even now, there's so many people who are sitting on the fence and they're like, I'll catch, me too, right? I worked, Harpreet knows, we're sitting in our den office and there's a couch here. For that 1 week after the Afghan Sikh issue happened, right? They killed 25 Sikhs in that March 1 week. I think 2 or 3 hours every day, just sleeping right on the couch, nonstop. I didn't even know who to call, but once I found out the right people, we made a team, and we were on this every day. And I kept telling, I'm like, keep in mind, these people are going through partition. Just like the way in 1947, you gave up everything. They literally, there's a gun above their heads, a mass level attack on the Sikhs that happened for 3 different days, where they're trying to exterminate all the Sikhs. We went from a population of 120,000, 125,000 down to about 600-700. And now 25 of them were killed. And then 18, 19 were killed 2 years ago when the MP candidate was going to meet the president. So now I was hoping there would be a huge cry because this is big. How often do 25? Last time it was in Chhattisgarh, where I think 34 Sikhs were killed. But I thought there'd be a huge demonstration, hue and cry that the Sikhs are being killed, but nothing.
Yeah, so, it kind of made the news a little bit online. You saw it on social media.
There was no mass movement. I thought that this would be spontaneous. It's like people are busy in everything else and all these silly other projects that they think, and I'm like, dude, we need the tree hugger kind of activists. You tell me, in Punjab, other than the Gurdwara Committee, what NGO or 84 related organization, what NGO works on policy issues, on education issues? Who do you know is really doing 25 million people, Sikhs, have no other representative that's working on all of these issues.
Right, yeah.
In the US, today the pain point is Canadian Sikhs, got to give them props. They came in from the Kim Bolan days to the Air India bombing and all the malignment that happened of their image to a point that they organized themselves. They created lobbies, whether it's WSO or other organizations, and
got involved into politics, became MPs,
invested in politics, invested in campaigns, created those networks. In the US, we're not even close.
Right.
What organization is working on the political front for the Sikhs? We're cutting our checks, giving our taxes, and the government is ready to work with us. We just don't have anyone to receive it. We have lots of uncles who want to take pictures with Joe Biden, but nobody who can say, hey, I've written this white paper or a policy document. Would you like to, or some attorney in your team or a think tank would like to read this and make this change for us?
No, you're right. And it's a very difficult thing. I mean, I think what happens for a lot of people, especially in America, and we might be more selfish in other countries, I don't know, but we see it, we sympathize with it, we maybe even empathize with it, but we don't act much on it. And a lot of that is not knowing where to go to act, not knowing what to do. So that's why I think some of the stuff that you guys are doing, and when we talk about it in formats like this, people can learn that. They can learn that and see that others are doing it and maybe even want to get involved now. Otherwise, it feels so distant. It feels so disconnected, and you wouldn't even know what to do. Like I know how to share a hashtag about even the farmers right now in India. I know how to share the images of the guy jumping on the water cannon, and calling him a hero, but I wouldn't know what further to do. Even then, when you see people in organizations saying, hey, donate money so that we can go feed these people and give them medical attention and this kind of stuff, then you got to ask, well, am I donating the money? And is it going specifically to help those farmers that are protesting, or is it going to your organization and you're going to allocate a certain amount? There's too many doubts. There's too many questions. It's sometimes hard to get to who's really acting and who's really acting with good faith and some transparency.
And I would say farmers don't need your money.
Right.
They need your time. They need your attention.
They need your voice.
They need your voice. Yeah. More than anything else.
And that's why I'm uncomfortable being a face, whether it's for the farmers or the widows. And that's why I make films, because I want them to represent themselves. They should tell their stories. And that's when you feel the pain. And that's when it becomes real.
Right.
So, I can share my feelings and we can share our experiences,
right.
The highs and lows and the challenges. But that doesn't do justice to the issue at all. That's why I encourage people to watch the film, to hear their voices and put a face to these people, because they're real. You can go to the village and meet these people.
Yeah.
And another thing that I was thinking about and didn't come up earlier was when you say farmers are committing suicide, people are quick to judge and say how selfish.
Right.
Leaving behind their bache, their kids and their family, and that's the easy way out.
Yeah.
But it's not. I don't think we should be judging them because it's hard. It's the way they commit suicide, the whole act in itself, but it's easier for them. I'm trying to remember that story of a guy that we met, and I think he had bought alcohol, and he said, if I don't drink this to drown my pain, I'll just go drink pesticide. I think it was really deep when he said it in Punjabi. He told us the story.
Yeah.
And
I was like, listen, why do you waste your money on alcohol? And even in Sikhi, we shouldn't be drinking alcohol.
We were at a teka trying to interview people.
So he basically was doing this to me in a way. You've got this urban, guy.
Yeah, you're lucky. You have luxuries. You are privileged, and it's easy for you to make those judgments.
Yeah, he was like, I have this 90210 kind of bird who's come over here and telling me how to run my business. And you can see at the end of the day, Harpreet's right. There's this acute level of depression. There's another thing that I've noticed. I mean, and I know this is probably pretty common, but judging someone in that position for committing suicide because they feel like they're losing their honor and they feel like they're losing everything about, taking care of their family. These are people that their feet are 2 inches thick of skin. Their hands are all rugged and cut and dirty. I mean, and am I just crazy? Is it like 30% of every farmer I see has already lost an arm? Yeah. There's no OSHA over there, so they've lost a lot. Yeah, these guys, it tells you about their approach in life. They have their carefree souls, they're hardened, and they will give. For them, life is not as valuable as it is to us. The life for them is for the giving.
Right.
Sarbadda pala, give, farm, take the produce, share it with everyone. Your life is meant to serve for others. Fight over there in the war zones and give up your life. I think Sikhs, or these Sikhs, I should say, I value my life. I value, on a serious note, I value using this life to live the Sikhi way, which is harder sometimes. But also, if you go with the option of giving up your life for the Sikhi way, it's equally admirable.
Right.
And I'll share the story which I told you yesterday. Was it took me to not people who committed suicide but gave up their lives, which is a different act. It's where you become shaheed, where you become a martyr.
No, this is a really interesting story because I definitely want you to go into this, explain this a little bit, because I think this is the key. We all think we're such tough guys, all of us. Yeah. We all think we're so tough. We're so brave. Put me in that position and this is what I would do. This is what I would do. But until you're in that moment, you don't know what you're going to do. Why don't you go ahead and explain what happened? You guys were, you had taken the kids and...
I'll let Manmeet tell the story, but I remember the moment when he looked at me and I grabbed his hand saying, being alive is more important because we can do bigger things.
Yeah.
Probably me just being scared. So go ahead.
No, it's right. So here, anyways, this is when we had to go to India's Congress Party's office.
Right.
So, we've been in these weird situations where we're demonstrating in front of the Indian embassy in DC that, hey, give us our rights, blah, blah, blah. You're doing, you guys are evil. And it's not, I love India. I love New Delhi. I love all the musicians. I love, reasonable and rational people, no matter whether they're Hindu, Muslim, I don't give a care. Whether they're gay, transgender, it's all color. It's just, I go into kitchens of these restaurants when I'm traveling. So I love all of that. Yeah. But these were those odd positions where we are going, like I wrote a letter to Amit Shah in April, who I think is a monster.
Yeah, right.
And then I went to, during the filming, we went to Congress Party's office to meet the person who was in charge of Punjab and to talk to them and et cetera, and get to set up some meeting.
And the kids were with us.
Yeah, the kids were with you guys. Yeah.
And out comes in a black SUV this guy who really seemed familiar. And I was like, oh my God. I was like, Hart, that's Jagdish Titler. And, you know, we were like, when we go to retreats and camps and we're like, it's Kamal Nath or it's Sachin Kumar who's behind the killings of so many Sikhs of these people coming.
Yeah, KPS Gill, whatever, yeah.
Yeah, if KPS Gill came in front of you back from the dead, you'd be like, what are you going to do?
Yeah,
I'm going to kill him, man. I'm going to do this. You know, you're like, yeah, that's because you're sitting in Michigan.
yeah. You're sitting at a camp where they're going to bring you some Gatorade and peanut butter sandwiches.
and Red Ass time hasn't kicked in yet. So we're just, you know, shooting the breeze.
Right. Looking at the lake and watching the sunset. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So all of a sudden I was like, dude, he's right here.
Yeah.
And,
right in front of you.
And in India, you know, you're like, dude, this guy is responsible for killing so many Sikhs.
And like then, literally directly responsible because he was the one organizing the Delhi riots. I mean, more, it's beyond that, but that specifically right there is enough. He was organizing specifically the killing of Sikhs during the Delhi riots.
Yeah. So that very instant, you know, you think about how spontaneous these amazing Sikhs were all of these years, that they encountered those same positions where they could make us proud and deliver justice at the expense of their own lives without thinking about their families. Because I don't know if that's the right thing that I did or rationalize myself or fool myself. You know, Harpreet was there, mom and dad are here, my work, this, my 401k, my home, this, that, everything. You know, it's like the flash. Before you're about to die, your life flashes.
Right.
So when you're planning to do something and your life flashes, and then you weigh in, how much better can I do by living? And maybe, you know, sometimes I think maybe I do all of this because I have to, because I had a moment and now I have to do all of this and use my life to compensate for what else I could have contributed, and these are, I don't know if these are crazy.
But specifically speaking here, because it was, I remember I heard you tell this years ago when we were talking, and with the way you described the moment, it's almost like time stood still for a second.
It did.
And you were looking at him and your hand is going towards your kirpan, like I should take action right now and I could take out Jagdish Titler. He's right in front of me. He's within my reach. I could do it right now and the deed would be done.
You see, the trauma within the Sikhs is so deep about 84. People don't get it. Right? One article, like anytime I want to wind myself up, I read Manushi's article of Baby Bhai and Darshan Kaur and Gurdeep Kaur, what happened to them and how brutal those rapes were, how brutal the killings of the Sikh children were.
That's the article that actually drove us to make the film.
And when you read, even now when I watch the Widow Colony, I mean, it's such a tearjerker and that extreme pain. People in the majority community or other communities don't understand the trauma of being so close and taking these instances and the lives of these women to heart.
Right.
That when you do this, or when all the Sikhs shaheeds, when they did this, some of it was just spontaneous. It had to be, you know, they were fighting for justice.
Right.
These weren't assassinations. These were, for them, a deliverance of some type of hope that our community is alive.
Right.
There is consciousness. There's a collective consciousness in the Sikh people, and we are a testament to that. And what did we do? What is going on with their families and their children? Who knows? Who cares? We don't even have a count. See, when a person dies or a soldier dies and he pulls that trigger and he knows that today might be the day, you know, you listen to the bullets in the air and you're like, man, if I can make it through this day, you know, I'd be golden. But you don't, and you get that hit. And the thought at that time was, you know, I was trying to emulate that and think at that time you say that I hope that the world or the people I'm fighting for remember my name. And that's why dog tags are so important. It's so important to recover that body for whether it's a US soldier. If I see a soldier at an airport, I always thank him. It doesn't matter who he is, what their religious beliefs are. All the Sikhs and all the friends and everybody who's listening, please, it doesn't matter, Gora soldier hai, soldier hai. Oh, banda amazing country, no amazing rectally, he's giving up his life. Even if he has a US flag on his shoulder, always thank the soldier. Our Sikh history is full of soldiers. All our Guru Sahibs, all these martyrs were soldiers. Okay, so look at it that way.
Okay.
So when a soldier gives up his life, he just thinks that, remember me, remember my name.
Yeah.
And remember my family. Or take care of my kids.
Because it really is the ultimate sacrifice.
Either one for our Sikh shaheeds. You don't even know if it's 5,000, 10,000, 100,000. It's just, we just don't give a shit. Our drug is the greenback, and we are so addicted to it, and we just don't give a shit. That's what's so sad about. We'll sit in front of a gurdwara and fool ourselves and do all of these, we have a huge issue in Punjab.
Right.
So, and this is not just today's farmers. It's been going on for a very long time. And sorry, I just, these things, because you're
don't apologize because no, the point you're making is very critical.
And
there's so many people that had lost their lives, and we don't have a proper, not only do we not have a proper count, which that should be simple. We don't know who they are at all. We don't know what their families are, what happened to these people, what happened to their families. And even in the people that try to go and investigate these things and bring these things to light, they also end up losing their lives. So you have these soldiers on both sides. You have the academic soldier, the activist soldier, and you have the actual people who were caught up in the violence.
Yeah. So, it's something that we just as a community have to be more mature.
Right.
If we need to cut down on this, Facebook activism and say, okay.
That's where most of us are. I mean, that's where most of us are.
And that's fine. It gets the crowd wound up and you're like, okay, let's get the momentum and get rid of the inertia, etc. But to diversify and look at what are the activist organizations and what are they doing? Or I think if Sikh Coalition, United Sikhs, Sikhri, you, me, it's really a time for our generation, because all of these people are of our generation.
Right.
To have a collective forum and say, okay, we are now the uncle generation, the new uncle generation. Okay. Right. We've got kids, we've got responsibilities, but we need to have a roadmap. Okay. Do we take over our gurdwaras? Do we have a bigger voice within our community? Push away, no matter how hard it is, these uncles away, take over there, figure out how we can create local networks politically. Because look at that. In the Afghan issue, I realized something. After 84, the biggest response that we ever got on any Sikh initiative was because US was involved in Afghanistan, we had that leverage, but it was because of these killings. And there's, Saving Hindus and Sikhs.com, there's a blog that Deepak Jolly worked on, and Deepak Aluwali and Rajdeep Jolly, they worked on, and we have a micro team that sort of did amazing things, and we're able to give them hope. But what was interesting for me in that is that we had a point where the people in Ghazni and Jalalabad were terrified. They said that their, hardcore, some of their friends said, hey, They opened the book, the Holy Quran, and said, look at here. Either you pay us, jizya, or we kill you, or you become a Muslim.
Right.
So they showed the verse in there. Yeah. And they're like, Taliban is coming for you guys, this, that, whatnot. And they work with some Taliban people to give them upfront, information and all of that. But there was a time where they were like terrified for their lives. 25 people are killed. And at that time, there's all this dilly-dallying between all the U.S. even though we were succeeding there, but nobody could call the prime minister or the president over there in Afghanistan.
Yeah.
And Harjeet Sudden picked up the phone and talked to the right people over there. Boom, it was done.
Right.
And I was like, dude, if we didn't have the kind of political muscle power in Canada or elsewhere.
Yeah, I mean, Harjeet Sudden being the defense minister in Canada.
He called the defense minister or his counterpart over there and said, hey, what's going on?
So he's at the highest level of a government.
Exactly. Within hours. They had tanks, security personnel, making sure when people are in Jalalabad, everything is being taken care of.
All right.
So here, if those guys weren't there, dude, we'd be just petitioning this, that, doing the grunge work with no success.
Right. Which really means that Sikhs need to be heavily involved in American politics.
1950s, they were Chik Banda Siga.
Yeah, the Leap song.
We use his example and abuse his example, but lone man who, he has an amazing life. Harpreet and I were looking into making a feature film on that. And we were like, okay, this is such an inspiring, it's like the Obama of the 50s kind of story.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And
I actually don't know much about him. I just know who he is.
Oh, it is such a fascinating story, intelligent, his love story, his story, how he became a judge, things that he did. He was a mathematician. He came from a small pin in Amritsar district, Chajjalwadi. And he won re-election after re-election and after re-election. The amount of Asians that are in this country is because of the policies he put in place. So he was the first brown, non-Semitic faiths person a congressman in the U.S.
Right.
So that in the 50s, and after that, we just went to sleep.
Yeah.
So since that, we've had no representation. And today, when you have Ilhan Omar over there as a star, petite little woman, she's, you're like, dude, she's there. What's wrong with you guys? I'll tell you what's wrong with us guys. We find that there's a lot more money elsewhere.
Well, it's not even just money. There is something else. It kind of goes back to your idea of what a shaheed is or what a soldier is. Put someone like me in the moment to say, rise up to the occasion and be a part of this change, policy making change, lobbying this way. And I'm going to say, me? No, not me. I got my wife. I got my kids. I don't have the time for this. Get somebody else. Get somebody who's smarter. Get someone who's more savvy. Get someone who's more charismatic. And we all wait that there's going to be some charismatic leader, man, woman, somebody is going to stand up, and then we're going to get behind them and we'll help them. That's what happens. That's how most of us think.
And when they do, if you've got some academics who are struggling, I know a few of them, they were gullible enough to listen to, hey, not be a doctor and do this, be a filmmaker.
I think people,
and they're left to fend for themselves.
Yeah, I think Mandir, you said it. People wait around for someone else to start something or follow organization, or they don't get along with so and so, or they don't agree with this mission. But you don't need to wait around. You can make a difference yourself wherever your expertise lie. And as filmmakers, this is something I can do. If you're a professor, a teacher, a doctor, whatever way you can contribute and make a difference and make your voice heard. And I think that's, just don't wait around for change. You can do it yourself. You can take a lead.
And, and some people are starting to do it. I mean, we have Ravi Palla is, there and like Manmeet Singh Kalon, I had him on the podcast earlier.
I was rooting for Cory Booker. If Cory was here and if he bought Grewal with him, U.S. Attorney General, dude,
Gurveer Singh Grewal, who's the Attorney General in New Jersey. Yeah. So
great success stories. We just have to be smarter about. That's why it's so important to have this lobby group, because that level of attention now, Saldev does it. I would urge them to do it more smartly. And
I also think that when you have like a lobby group like that, especially like if you're going to get into a Sikh think tank, it needs to be apolitical. We have to stop aligning ourselves with a particular political party and align ourselves with candidates or ideologies. And I know that's kind of difficult because everything's so polarized right now. But, people forget in the 80s and stuff, it was the Republicans that were helping the Sikhs with everything that was happening in India. And Democrats were more on the India side, and some of that flips back and forth, and whatever. But we have to have our inroads with all the political parties.
Yeah, I mean, I was in the Indian political process. I took my own personal interest, and we were observing things when there was a possibility of change in the leadership in Punjab. That. So my engagement was, let's work over there, let's work over here, let's work wherever to bring this change. And during the process, I had people from Shromani Akali Dal to Congress as my friends. I have a guy who is a fanatic Trump supporter. I've got a couple of them, and then I'm a Bernie guy. I'm like, listen, man, these are just conversations. Just chill, relax, and talk about it, and learn from each other. There are things that Trump did. And through Ivanka, and now I know we're going off on tangent. Is
it's okay.
They're saying, okay, we're going to give maternity leave to all of these Fed employees.
Yeah,
that's a beautiful thing. I mean, you got to commend him for that. You got to commend him that he's saying we got to be serious about bringing our troops home. Yeah. And we can't be the police of the world if they're not going to pay for it. Not pay for it just by money, but also their own lives. Why are American lives being sacrificed? There are so many things that I do agree with him. And I think that this harsh sort of Rush Limbaugh kind of narrative.
That's political theater, though. Rush Limbaugh stuff, Sean Hannity stuff, that's all entertainment.
Entertainment. That's to sell soap on TV, right? Don't take that as... So anyways, we're going on.
Yeah, no, but your point is well made. And maybe it's not so much that, you agree with Trump or whatever, but we can agree with certain action. We can say, hey, these are the right steps, and then lobby for the things that we think need to be done. And it doesn't matter then who picks up the ball and runs with it, as long as it's in the right direction.
Yep. So
I guess we would have actually been in India right now if it wasn't for COVID. And that's what's painful as a filmmaker, because all this is happening and you're like, oh man, I could have been in the field right now. I could have been covering this. So
so you said how much footage that you had all that footage and everything. Is there any possibility that you'll be able to take that footage and produce something else out of it?
Yeah, I think we'll go on to different topics. There's some personal films that we are looking at doing.
I think Nadir's asking more about the farmer stuff right now. If we're going to go back and
like in the farm, because you're saying that you had so much footage that you had done, but then you had to kind of pull out a story. So I'm assuming there's a lot of stuff left on the cutting floor.
I mean, there's countless ways to tell a story. So I could make a second film out of the same thing, but as Manmeet's saying, there are so many other issues that we want to address.
Yeah,
I think the film we made, it brings out the issue. It highlights what's happening, and there's a lot of stuff coming out now in the current media. So to put all our energy, it's like making a whole other film. You'd have to take up footage and go through. So I think right now we'll focus our energy on what's currently happening, and maybe we can pull out some old clips and maybe some interviews.
Yeah.
Not necessarily put another film together.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So there are a couple of takeaways. I don't know if you have questions and things of that nature, but where do we go from here? What are the things we can do individually as a community,
absolutely,
et cetera, right? So let me put things in context. This is something that I'll share this also. Prabhasharan Deep and Prabhasharan Beer did an interview which was fascinating.
Now they're in British Columbia.
One's in British Columbia, one's in California.
I see. And can you give a little background about their professors or?
Yeah, they're pursuing the academic line, and good luck to them. They're going to starve, but when they leave, people will hopefully read their work and appreciate their ideas, because really we can't keep going back to Professor Puran Singh or Gurmukh Singh and go all of these, because today's situations are different. You need to have today's guidance given. So it was interesting of them to bring up that Arab Spring was a huge issue in our dailies over here and on Capitol Hill. And it was small compared to the Bargadi Kand, where we had Guru Granth Sahib's Beadbi Kand, where Guru Granth Sahib was desecrated, and Sikhs were killed. There were all these protests and all of that. So these protests will always be there, but we're never there to organize and receive the benefit of all the sweat, blood, and time and money and everything that we're spilling. Right? We never are able to yield that. I'll give you an example. Is Simranjit Singh Mann, right? So he went to jail. All of that huge success, landslide victory during '84, and it got, I'll say, squandered away. The team and the organization. You cannot. For how long are we going to accept that our leaders are just going to be Gurdwara level politicians?
Right.
You've got not Steve Jobs. What's the guy? Tim Cook.
Oh yeah.
Talking to the chief minister in Hyderabad, in Karnataka, in South India, and they're having discussions about technology, about manufacturing, and ours is. Tim Opal went to this Pravasi program, and I met Tim and Kiran. We were at a hotel, and I was like, man, and the whole Canadian embassy's cavalcade was there. So I was like, dude, man, Tim, this is nice. It's nice to have this muscle power in bringing change in the world. He's not there just for the Sikhs. It's beautiful. The world should know when Sikhs get power.
Right. Okay.
They use that power for Sarbat Dapala. We love doing things for making this a better place. You can look at Manmohan Singh and you can look at Tim and lots of our Sikh leaders who just do lots of, even the new people, some of them that are in India, the young leaders, some of them, they have that seva and activist kind of mentality. But anyways.
But here, let me ask you something though, real quick, because I know we were saying earlier about these corporations and the negative impact of their influence. But isn't it, these are the same corporations, Microsoft, GM, IBM, whatever, Apple, whoever it is. These are all companies that have the world's eye on them, and we expect them to behave a certain way. Isn't that a possible way to bring that positive change to these places too? That we can tell Microsoft, or we can use Microsoft as a tool to say, hey, you can't operate your business where there is this kind of oppression or this economic oppression or even social or political oppression.
Yeah, I mean, you've got to look at it in the geopolitical space. Jasjeet, who used to be in CloudLifter.
Yep.
Now he's in the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, right? So where Richard Branson and Sundar Pichai and all of these people, or all the prime minister and presidents, they go to the White House, and right across the White House is this House of Flags, U.S. Chamber of Commerce. They literally make a beeline towards his office, and they talk about international policy, etc. And they're talking about these behemoth corporations and countries and how should we trade. And so within that space, the agenda right now is how do we dilute our relationship? How does US dilute their relationship with China? And how do we benefit India? And India is very eager to cash in on that sentiment. Within that, if India is smart, if Manmohan Singh was in power, he would say, let's make this a sincere effort and let's make this a lasting relationship. I remember a shabad of Professor Darshan Singh that he said that we are accepting Ram Raj also, if it truly is a Ram Raj, right?
Right.
Do you remember that recording?
No, but go ahead. It's an interesting point.
So it's not this Hindutva kind of fascist, crazy nut job kind of whatever they're projecting,
right?
Terrorist kind of form. For me, it's if Ravi Shankar was alive, and you see Ravi Shankar and Allah Rakha, a Muslim and a Hindu. For me, I look at that as it's happened in our faith. You had Mardana and Baba Nanak and you see that syncretic sort of atmosphere. If we can bring that in India on a more serious way, because that is a path where it's a win-win for so many. But it's again, it's this utopian dream. But you just have to have it somewhere in the back of your head, a better place. And that's why he said, we'll take Ram Rajya if you can establish that, where even if injustice is done to one person, Ram was able to give up his throne. Yeah. And if that's the scenario, and that's why I feel when we talk about India, there's lots of separatist dialogue, but there should also be dialogue. If that's not possible, given this framework, how do we make a safe space for it and genuinely fight for that?
Right.
You will talk about, there are activists in India, Sikh activists and attorneys, and, I don't want to mention their name over here, but they truly don't believe in a separatist, independent nation and a Sikh space over there. They feel that would be, one, a mistake. It's not possible, and they have their reason, but they are diligently fighting for the benefit of the Sikhs. What I don't like is people when they say, hey, stop talking about Khalsa, and they themselves don't work for the benefit of the Sikh.
Right. They're not doing anything else. Right.
And I'm like, dude, and they get to the point where you can't even talk about human rights.
Yeah.
Because then it's not trauma. Then you're an idiot.
Right. No, interesting.
So lots of things, but I will say I always like to share this one story because I feel we should always come to closure and take inspiration from Harpreet and I. In our travel in India, so many interesting, funny, inspiring stories, and I think if there was one that inspired me the most, I'll share that because people and your listeners should also take a lesson from this. Is we're on our way Delhi towards the airport, ready to fly back to the US, and the family decided, hey, we're just going to have a dinner at a nice restaurant and all of that. We ate, had a good laugh, we're in a great mood, and we come out, we're heading towards our car, ready to go to the airport, and I see this kid at about 10:30 p.m. on a weeknight, Sikh kid with a patka and his hair's coming out, the 10 p.m. patka. Your Judas over here. So he's selling keychains. And, and I'm like, oi, tera school nahi hai? Don't you have school?
Yeah.
It's a weeknight. You should be either doing homework or in bed. What are you doing, selling keychains or whatever? And he was taken aback, like either you buy it or don't.
I don't need a lecture from you, uncle.
I have a granddad, I have a dad, I have 3 uncles, I've got 2 older brothers, and this stranger. So I'm like, Harp. But he was cute. He had those, sort of hazel type of, brownish hair, hazel eyes, whatever.
Right.
And so I'm like, Harp, give me 100 rupee. This was couple of years ago, 100 rupees meant something then. And I'm like, Harp, give me 100 rupees. So I gave it I'm like, here, take this and go home.
And study.
Yeah, and study. Mantir, what he told me, he shook me. He brought me to my knees. He humbled me. And I gave him the 100 rupees. Instantly, his reaction was, sir, main bheek nahi mangta. I don't beg. Yeah, so I was like, oh man, shit, I wasn't expecting that.
Right.
You give money to a kid over here who has everything, they'll ask for money.
Oh, absolutely.
Dude, this kid.
No, they'll tell you it's not enough.
This kid probably didn't know the name of the 10 gurus or whether he knew anything about our history.
Yeah.
But he bled, the kesari.
Right.
He knew his gut. He had a Sikhi gut. For us, we compromise on that, depending upon whether, we have a election going on or friends or whatever positions we negotiate with that. But him, he said, I'll sell keychains
every night from now on, but I don't want your 100 rupees if you're just handing it. So I took some keychains and I gave it to him. But, the whole family was just, talking in the car, and I was like, Harp, I stopped everyone. I'm like, can you imagine? This is just what happened to me. And it happened to me in Punjab also. The whole crew was there. We were in a village and these kids wouldn't take anything from us. And I was like, and even when you go and give blankets, if you call to the gurdwaras, it's really interesting. Now that I don't want it to be based on caste, but some of the Sikhs who were at one time landowners, it's like you and I. If we lost our jobs, if we had to work at Walmart, it'd be like 2 cities down where nobody from the gurdwara comes.
Right. You don't want to see you.
Pride.
Yeah.
And so when you give these families, the whole neighborhood is watching, here's blanket for you and this, and here are the alms. No, they have pride. You actually have to go to their houses and give it to them. Yeah. And it's beautiful because it says they have, it's like even people in Afghanistan, they will never do this. They're like, as Sikhs, we only do this to Guru Nanak.
Right.
Never to a mortal. It's fascinating. It's just,
it shows something about the spirit. It shows something about the mentality.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it is. It's heroic. It's heroic. It's there. They are not in history books, but there are many in these villages and in these lands and in the gurdwaras.
Yeah, and what you're talking about is it's like an integrity or a character, and it's not our typical idea or definition of what a Gursikh is, right? Because we're not talking about it from that aspect. You're talking about a character of somebody that maybe you could say, okay, that comes from a culture or it comes from the Sikh culture, but it's not our traditional definition of a Gursikh.
Yeah.
But but this is an element of Gursikhi that you don't need to beg, that you can work hard, work honest, earn your living, and then share what you get, right?
Yeah, Manaf ki tek birthi sab jaan. Devan ko ek hai Bhagwan. Right. For us, our giver is not just unemployment check or this or that. For us, we truly believe that God and that energy that we call God and the creator knows, and he or she or it has created this system where all the animals are taken care of, all the vegetation is taken care of, and you are taken care of. And if this ego thinks that they can decipher the creator who created everything, you still have a lot to learn in life, and it's very juvenile notion. So, but anyways, coming back to the grit of what we're trying to discuss and action items for people who are listening. Yeah. If you want to help the farmers immediately within 1 week, right?
Yeah.
There are organizations that are collecting money. You have family, you can send it over there. I have a guy who said, hey man, I'm trying to arrange porta potties. He Googled porta potty people and said, okay, I will send you the money, deliver these porta potties here. So people are hustling. You have to be creative in ways you can. Okay. If you're a high school student or a college student here, right? You do social media for all this other crap, and you do it for American politics or activism or for animal rights. Jump on this bandwagon because Modi and BJP has this whole army.
They have a huge machine. Yeah.
They have this huge machinery and these troll departments. And I've seen that. Their headquarters is in New Delhi. It's a new building, and it's it seems like, hey man, it doesn't look like an Indian political party's office. It looks like a Microsoft office.
Oh wow.
So this is not the huge contrast between if you go to a Shromani Akali Dal, you'll have people just.
Well, we already know Modi Sahab has a huge Photoshop department.
Oh yeah,
so, all his entire campaign was Photoshops.
So things you can do for free are, of course, be active in all of this immediately and educate yourself. The film is out there. There are many films. There are websites. Sanj will take your money and help a family. Yeah. So it's not this in the moment, but sit down and year end, refocus, right? It's great to do langars all the time, but when you have a fire in your backyard or when your plane is crashing, you're not going to be held guilty for helping
your own brethren or yourself in that situation.
Right.
Okay. So we say Sarbadda Pala, but read the whole Ardas. The whole Ardas also talks about righteousness and fighting for justice and examples of all the people that did.
Yeah.
Read the whole Ardas in entirety and use those examples also. And just like you have a portfolio for your stocks, be smart about organizations, have political organizations that you align with, help them. But also the whole diaspora disconnect. In 84, you and I, we were connected, our parents were connected on a day-to-day basis when it was $1 a minute to call Punjab, right?
Absolutely.
Today, when it's for free, the diaspora is so disconnected, especially the new generation. Oh, we don't know. Well, that ignorance is going to cost you. It's inexcusable.
Well, I'm hoping something will come out of like this podcast. Hearing people hearing you talk about this stuff, I'm hoping it'll help them realize that you can do things. There are ways to do it because you're doing it, right? So the example is there, and I think that's what a lot of us miss is we don't see the path in front of us, so we just dismiss it.
Yep. See, look at Black Lives Matters, right? It's an amazing thing. Now, there are people in our community. They were like, "Oh, it's for Kale," and I sent them a picture of Kale Sikhs, and they jumped on board. And I was like, "Okay." I'm like, if we have African Americans or people from Africa who have immigrated and they become Sikhs, then will you be concerned? They're like, "Yes." I'm like, "So you have to be concerned." But that movement. Today these guys made a point, the Prabsharandeep brothers, that if you say anything derogatory, whether it's on TV or on Twitter, you're fired.
You're right.
Okay?
Right. There's accountability.
That doesn't apply to Sikhs. That definitely doesn't apply to Sikhs in Punjab. So today, the next thing, if you want to help, is politically organize. Go to your congressman, go to your senator, and just tell them that it doesn't matter whether you understand these farm laws. In a democracy, these people have the right to protest. That is our first point of contention here.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
That how can, my dad, at his age, if somebody goes in, he's 80. And if there's a cannon over there, a water cannon, and that one image, there's so many, you can juxtapose some of these pictures from this protest to the 84 pictures, and you see the lathi going this way to a Sikh today. And I'm like, we're still treated the same shitty way as we were in 84.
Yep.
So, get politically, learn about it. Do not say, I don't know. Call me. You know how to reach us. Go to the website, alittlerevolution.com. There is some background information. And I'm
going to put links in the description to these videos. I'll have links to how they can get a hold of you and the links to the movie. And et cetera,
definitely. Et cetera. And the most important thing is let's not be in that reactive mode all the time.
Yeah.
Such scenarios, whether it's Afghanistan or whether it's Sikhs protesting for farmer rights, or whether it was Oak Creek that happened here, or whether it's any other crises, okay? We need to have a political voice. In my lifetime, Manmeet, I want to see a Sikh, male, female, Democrat, Republican, doesn't matter. I don't care whether, Harpreet Kaur, she's on the other side.
Right.
It would be awesome if she, I was like, if she was in a red state, she'd be sitting on Capitol Hill. I would love to see her. There are others, whether it's Grewal, whether it's whoever, whether it's our kids in our lifetime.
Right.
We need to have a Sikh on Capitol Hill. End of story.
Yeah. No, you actually covered a lot of stuff, and there's a lot of important stuff here. I know we started off with the whole farmers protest thing, and I hope people will get some idea of what it's about, but understanding that these things go deeper, they're bigger. They need this kind of I don't like using proactive, these kind of buzzwords, but it's the kind of activism that's kind of consistent and it's maybe smaller than even people realize.
And here is the other thing. As a couple, it becomes for 10 years, Mandir, every vacation, we were either in activist mode or in filmmaking mode.
I see. Yeah.
And for those 10 years, for the longest time, we didn't even buy a house. We were like, okay, it's against our whatever to buy a house. I think that was a bad financial. But we were like, okay, we just everything that we have is to give.
You guys needed a better realtor.
That too, but a financial counselor. And anyway, so it got to a point where we were like, okay, it's okay to have a little bit for ourselves for our old age, and then maybe save enough to get back into that. But it's great to have a life partner where we complement each other and we know our stories. We know all of those. It's a beautiful place to be if you can do as a couple.
And we're there to save each other. I'm going to end with a kind of comical now story. Be fearless. That's what the whole, I guess, the lesson here is be fearless. Yeah. And that's the only way people ask us, how did you do this interview? How did you do this? And when I look back, if you let fear cross your mind, even for a split second, it's over. Yeah. You can't do it because you are in danger. There have been issues in the field. I'm not going to bring those up, but if you let fear cross your mind, you're done.
Oh, that's the good stuff. That's what we want to hear.
Well, here's the good stuff. During the making of this film, when the crew was gone, everybody was gone, the whole time we kept thinking, man, we got to talk to the cops. We want to talk to the police about this issue. Oh, wow. And then somebody wise advised us, nahi, you will not go to the police station. You will not go to the cops because you're already being watched. All the film crew is gone. We're done making the film. The demonstration's over. So we decide we're going to go say goodbye to all the families in the villages. And so we went back. And then the wise person went home. And he told us, I'll see you tomorrow. You guys, it's too late to come home tonight, so I'll see you tomorrow. So the next day on the way home, it's like 10 p.m. Manmeet's driving this Maruti, and
I drove in India.
He drove.
It was just Harpreet and me. I was driving in Punjab everywhere on my own.
Oh, wow. That's
so
pretty
we had our Maruti full of our equipment, full of our hard drives, everything. And Manmeet passes the police station, and then he turns around and he goes, "We're getting this interview."
Oh my
and I
gosh.
thought, oh my God, that's Vajgan. This is not safe. Uncle advised us. We're not supposed to do this. He goes, it's done. We've got everything we need. We just need this one interview. We need to hear it from their mouth that these suicides are happening. And I thought, oh my God, okay, fine. And so Manmeet leaves the car and he says, if I don't come back in 10 minutes, leave.
Oh, wow.
I'm thinking, we don't even talk.
Get help or
whatever. He just says leave. And he takes off. And I'm thinking, oh my God, this is crazy. And I'm sure it wasn't 10 minutes yet, but it seemed like forever.
Oh, I can imagine.
And I'm thinking, okay, here's the entire film here, the hard drives, the tapes, the equipment. Where am I going to run? And we've got money in the car and I've got to save Manmeet. Like all this stuff's running in my head. And I'm thinking, okay, now they've tied up Manmeet. They're probably torturing him. I got to save him. So we have mace sprays, we have kirpans. So I have 2 kirpans on both sides. And then I take mace sprays. I stick one in one sleeve, one in the other, 2 down in my socks. And
you're like going in like Rambo.
Pretty much. And this is like my mind is going crazy. I'm like, okay, I've got to save
Even though he specifically told you to leave.
Yeah. And I said, all the backup material, we already told my brother where that is. So TK, the film will make it back to US somehow. Someone will put it together. So I'm going in, I go to the front gate. My heart is beating so fast, but I'm trying not to think of what could happen. And I'm thinking I'm going to save Manmeet. Wow. So my image is of Manmeet being tied up and these guys are probably beating him up. That's my image in my head. I get to the front gate and there's this really tall police officer standing there. And I say, Sat Sri Akal, Sardar ji aise na andar gaye na? I ask him, the Sardar came, did he go inside? And this guy does not even look at me. He's totally ignoring me. And I'm thinking, okay, whatever. I just march in and I go in and inside there's the police station, the main, and there's a bunch of cops laughing and they're just talking really loud and they just get quiet when they see me. And I freeze and I'm looking and then all of a sudden Manmeet comes rushing out and goes, we got him. We got the interview. And I was just like, oh my God. So anyways, yeah.
When that notion
be fearless.
It's like the kid's not coming home or this, that, and you're like, okay, what the hell, You think of the worst in those scenarios and then it just terrifies
you. Anyways, we got the interview. We never made the cut. It just
but again, first of all, you're right. Be fearless. I mean, first of all, Manmeet, you're out of your mind to turn around and go back. And then Harpreet, you were supposed to just leave. You can't arm up and go marching in there.
Hey, I had mace spray. I had Kepans.
That is awesome. That's such a great story. That's so you guys, actually.
Yeah, but I think that's what keeps us going. We just, like now when I think of it, I'm like, that was a dumb thing to do. We've done a lot of dumb things in the field, but I think we wouldn't have these stories to tell. We wouldn't have these films if we, let fear cross our minds. So
no, that is awesome.
Yeah. To all the young couples, I have to get the last story in. As a kid, I remember that my dad and my mom, they both kind of inspired me. This is sort of my Oscar speech about mom and dad.
Okay.
So I clearly remember that there was a case where my dad, we were in this little shop in the market, and there was this guy who was getting too close with this woman, and then my dad was like, I noticed, I was like, there's something weird, and then he moved. The lady left and went to the side, and this guy started doing the same thing. My dad, as a Punjabi Sikh guy, he had to, he noticed that, and he went in, grabbed the guy from his neck, pulled him out this is in Dubai, and all of a sudden there's a crowd, and the owner of the shop comes, and my dad's like giving him a good whack, and, the prime Punjabi vocabulary is being unleashed on this guy. And he like this, that, whatnot. And the shop owner, he's like, Sardarji, bahut acha kiya. You did great. And everybody's admiring my dad. So I remember vividly, because I was like, dude, my dad's a hero.
Yeah.
This is awesome. So when you, Mantir, or when all the other young adults do the same thing.
Other young adults. Have you seen my daddy?
We are young adults.
It's good positive thinking. I'm with you.
So if you've got kids, don't say, because of the kids, we're so tied up. Because of the kids, you got to take them out to the protest. When you're no longer, my mom and dad are they're taking the Xbox away. Of course they're going to take me. But then think, if you can be their superhero, they will remember that. Oh, wow, we went on a demonstration and my mom fought for our rights, or they fight. So when you fight, you inspire your kids to follow you. They will admire you for doing more than fixing breakfast.
Right. No, that's really interesting. It's a very good point. No, I appreciate it. I actually appreciate everything you guys talked about today. Thank you so much for taking the time. I know you guys are both very busy too. Took the time, explained a lot of issues. I think many people are going to find this very, very informational and useful. And I want to have you guys back on. There's actually many topics we could talk about, some of them in great detail that are also having great impact in our communities. And, I think the more dialogues we have like this, the more information people get, the better they're going to be able to get involved and actually do something. So again, thank you so much for coming on and talking to me today.
Yeah,
thanks to all the listeners for recording all of these voices. Thank you, everyone. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa.
Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa. Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh.